finish this food.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome into another Victory Monday here on the Scarlet and Gray podcast. I am Tyler Johnson. I am joined once again by Jordan Dalton. JD, how are we doing tonight, man? As you're chowing down over there?
I'm good. Just got off work. I'm ready to relax, talk some football, and hopefully this leads into another Victory Monday next week. So I'm doing great.
A lot to get into tonight. We have a jam-packed show, some great guests. But before we get to our first guest this evening, just a reminder, guys, that the Scarlet and Gray podcast is proud to be partners with Underdog Fantasy. And right now, you still have time to get your pick'ems in for Monday Night Football. Do you think Matthew Stafford's going to go over 250 yards tonight on the road after he struggled so far this season? You can put some higher or lower on that. Cam Akers, Allen Robinson, Cooper Kupp. I mean, who's the best receiver in the NFL? I said that. But if you guys want to make sure you get your pick'ems in, go right now to UnderdogFantasy.com or the Underdog Fantasy app. Use code 216 to double your first deposit up to $100. Once again, we are live on all streaming platforms tonight. But if you want to leave your questions or comments for us, you have to be joining us on YouTube. And you could subscribe to the YouTube channel for free. So you guys want to make sure you do that, as Network 216 provides you guys with daily Ohio sports content. In our first guest this evening, we are joined by Josh Keatley from Buckeyes Wire. Josh, how you doing this evening?
Dude, I'm doing great. It's always a great day being a Buckeye fan, man.
It is. We're all Browns fans here, so it's very refreshing being able to talk about a team that consistently is one of the best in their particular sport.
Well, the Browns are one of the best, and signing felons and of the like. Is that not what you're going for?
No.
Hey, I'm a
right.
Browns fan. I can say it. I'm allowed to say it because I'm a Browns fan.
Exactly. Well, we really appreciate you joining us tonight, and we kind of just want to start off, and we want to get your perspective on this season. Obviously, Ohio State started off 5-0. And they started off with a tough game, I would say, week 1 against Notre Dame. But what have been your thoughts about the Ohio State Buckeyes so far this year?
So, I think honestly, it's really hard to say this because they're 5-0, they're ranked 3 in the country, and they've scored 50 points every game, but they've been a little disappointing. Okay, They've had injuries in a couple key spots. They've had cluster injuries in the defensive backfield. So, again, I'm making excuses for them. Things can get better, but they haven't played away yet, right? So, and playing away is very tough. So, I'd really like to see that. And Notre Dame is a very good team, a very tough team. I still stand by that, but they did lose to Marshall, who lost to Gardner Webb yesterday. So it's not exactly strengthening the resume. And there's just been streaks of awkwardness, right? So, for instance, the Rutgers game, Ohio State played well. They smashed them. They beat them by 40 points. But, they've only beaten the spread one time, and it was against Toledo, which I know it's betting, but, good teams win. Great teams beat the spread. And for instance, when they were on the goal line, I mean, it took them 3 plays and 3 awkward incompletions before they just handed off to Mayan from the 2. And two timeouts. It was dude, what are you doing? The guy has 4 touchdowns. Just end this. Just end the misery, man. And there's just weird stuff like that. Or Denzel Burke getting beat randomly by wide receivers that are my size at Arkansas State. It's just, what's going on? But, I mean, they're good. They're getting better, but that's kind of my take.
And a lot about Denzel Burke. We've talked about him a lot on this show. Patience is really starting to run out at this point. I mean, this was a guy that came in as a freshman All-American, and he has not performed really well at all this year. Explain what has happened with Denzel Burke. Is this a guy that we just completely overrated? Did he get lucky with his freshman year? What is going on? He was supposed to be one of the key parts of the secondary, and quite honestly, it's getting to the point to where you can't even have him on the field.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I don't know what the answer was. I think that we did overrate him, right? But I don't think we overrated him an intense amount. I was speaking to a Ram scout a couple weeks ago, and I asked him, I said, Caden Curry, Sonny Styles, these are guys that are getting on the field relatively early, even if it's special teams. Should I take stock in that? And he said, yes, absolutely. Those guys are seeing the field. That's an important thing. And that kind of made me feel better about my reference to Denzel Burke last year, because Denzel Burke, everybody talked about Trayvon Henderson. Denzel Burke was the guy I was thinking 3 years from now, we're going to talk about him like we talk about Jeff Okudah, Damon Arnett, Antoine Winfield as far as one of the greats. So, I know I definitely overrated him. I don't think he's done. I don't think he's dead. I think that it's a very swag, confidence-driven position. I think if you get beat once, it's really hard to catch your footing to not get beat again. And I think that's what you're kind of seeing. You see him get a couple weird penalties where he's pass interference. He didn't do that stuff last year. He wasn't grabbing at jerseys when he was getting beat. He caught up and he, knocked down the ball. It's just been a weird season for him. I don't think he's a failure. I don't think he's done or anything. I don't think we're looking at a Sean Wade situation where it's like, dude, we got to get him out of here. And, he's reached a ceiling. We got to move this along. He's got 2 years left, maybe one, but I think he's still a good player, but you definitely don't want to lose the game because of him. And Jair Brown, the freshman, that's a dude who I really like. It's really hard to find high school tape on him. If you guys like, you're scouring, YouTube to find stuff, but he was in a lot of 7-on-7 camps, and you could see him jawing and run his mouth. Got a lot of Damon Arnett to him, where he's not the most athletic dude, not the most physical dude, but he does everything really well. And he doesn't seem like he's going to lose that confidence. So I have no problem with Jair Brown, but I'm also not giving up on Denzel Burke, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely think he changed his number right before the game. And I think that was kind of like his thought process, though, is kind of like, I need to get my swagger back. I need to get a new number, fresh start. And then he just goes out there and gets burnt. So, and
that's good. The final result wasn't good, but the action of I'm gonna just kind of cleanse myself, wipe myself clean, I think is a good sign. You know what I mean? It's always good to be aware that you suck, right? It's you've always seen, but I'm talking about. You always see those guys that are like, nah, man, I'm the dude. And it's like, dude, you're not the dude. You know that, right? It's always good to know your role and know where you can improve. And that's one of the reasons why I haven't given up on Burke yet. I mean, this is a guy who was all Big Ten last year as a freshman. I mean, you can crack open any preseason magazine, Phil Steele, all those guys making big money writing about the sport. And they all had Denzel Burke as an All-American. There's something there. It's just, it's missing right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One guy we really want to ask you about, because we're so little short story here, is myself, Jordan, and our other co-host, Nick, that I mentioned earlier. We're actually from Lexington, Ohio, and graduated from Lexington High School. So we have to ask you about Cade Stover, the Ohio State tight end that really has come into his own this year. What have been your thoughts on him? I mean, this is a guy that moved around a lot, but he really seems to have found a home at tight end. And it looks like C.J. Stroud is really making a point to try and target him in the passing game. What have been your impressions with Cade Stover so far?
Farmer Gronk, I love him, dude. He's a fun watch, man. He's a fun player. He was good. I think he's a guy I firmly thought. I think I even wrote an article at Buckeyes Wire like in June or July. I said Cade Stover's going to play both ways. He's going to be the white farmer version of Chris Gamble. You just watch and see. I swear to God, I just thought because he was good at linebacker. He flew to the ball. He's aggressive. And you could kind of tell by the way he talks, the way he moves. He's always wearing like country singer T-shirts and stuff like he just looks like he plays. And he's just I think he's a guy. Man, I really don't want to act like he's going to be the next big thing in the NFL, because the Ohio State has produced a lot of very productive, maybe not at the level of Travis Kelce, Gronkowski, those guys, but guys that have been in the NFL for a while. Nick Vannett's been in the NFL for a long time. Ruckert's going to be in the NFL for a long time. Jeff Hireman's been in the NFL for a long time. And I think Cade Stover can, those are guys that were all second, third round draft picks. And Cade Stover's doing way more than those guys ever did. He's done more in 5 games than those guys did their entire careers. And I don't think it's a byproduct of the offense. I mean, we've seen this offense. We've seen this offense blatantly ignore Jeremy Rucker. There's something there. There's something there. And the guys love him. They're always talking, you can see it on the sideline. He ups the ante, and he plays like he looks. He's got the big elbow wrap and the face paint. He plays like he looks, and it's cool, So I love him. I think he's the dude. I think he is a dude. I mean, what was it? Kevin Wilson at the press conference, what was it, 2 weeks ago? Yeah, it was after Toledo. He had 2 touchdowns, and he got hurt. So they kind of sat him out the rest of the game. And Kevin Wilson came out, and the offensive coordinator said, I think he's in for a big year. Like, dude, he's already had the biggest year of any tight end in the past 10 years. He's already. So if you think he's going to have a big year and he's already done that, okay, I'm gonna buy up all the Kate Stover stock. If we were playing college fantasy football, I'd be buying them all up, dude.
Yeah, during the game, they said that Mayan Williams came runner-up to Kate Stover for Mr. Ohio, and I had no idea that Mayan Williams was number 2. So
I didn't know that either.
In the same year or whatever, I thought that was pretty cool.
That's wild. That's Mayan Williams, another guy's super underrated. I said it last. Trayvon Henderson gets all the hype, and I'm like, dude, he moves the pile, dude. He moves it. You saw, dude. I mean, that was one of the best performances I've ever seen in person. And like everybody was. Some people said some negative things like, "Oh, well, it's Rutgers." No, it's not like that. You can see there's dudes. First, that Avery Young, number 2 for Rutgers, is going to be in the NFL. He's a big, stocky defensive back that's so good. They start him at safety and corner. That's an all Big Ten defensive back. And if you're all Big Ten, you're probably going to get drafted within the first 3 rounds. He's going to be in the NFL for a bit. And Mayan Williams juked him on the 3rd play, and I was like, dude, this is not. It ain't like you're playing Youngstown State where you're going up against guys like me. No, dude, Rutgers. There's some talent on that defense, and he still just shoved him around. He's just good. He's very, very good, very underrated.
Yeah, so we did a podcast preview, and I always have to talk about it because it was like, who's going to be your dark horse player on offense this year? And I said Mayan Williams, and both these co-hosts just dogged me. He was like, no way. They're like, he's not even going to get the ball this year, and I was like, dude, he's going to be the guy. You watch. And did
you think he was going to be the guy because he's good, or because? Are you a glass half full or glass half empty kind of guy? He's going to get the ball because he's good, or Trayvon Henderson's going to get hurt? That's the difference.
No, so it was more the way that they were utilizing him early on last year, and he started the season kind of as running back 1, and I was like,
yeah.
So I'm like, there's definitely the coaches definitely like him, but Trayvon exploded on the scene, and he was just such a different change of pace, and it just fit the offense a little bit better. But I thought this year, he was going to be a guy that came on the scene, and I wasn't expecting him to be 50-50 split with Henderson. But
the thing about the running back position, especially at Ohio State. So if Mayan Williams played at a place like Wisconsin or Illinois, you'd be carving his name into the Heisman. But at Ohio State, they want their running backs to have a little bit. You gotta be. It's just like the NFL, right? They want their running backs. You cannot be an elite running back in the NFL if you can't catch the ball in the backfield. If you can't bust it and be explosive, and Trayvon has that. Trayvon adds an extra flair to his game. He can turn on a dime. He's got that next level athleticism that you kind of want in your lead back. Mayan Williams doesn't. I don't want to say he doesn't have that, because we've seen some of that. It's just he's more like Kenneth Walker from Michigan State, right? Who had 2 receptions. It was the entire offense, but they threw the ball to him twice the whole year. Mayan Williams is a little bit like that. He can't. It's not that he can't do it. It's just that's not a specialty. But Mayan Williams is just a good back. I love Trayvon Henderson, but that's a guy that when you watch his film, it's not like you see. When you watch it, it's not like when you watch Bijan Robinson at Texas, where it's like, my God, who's going to stop that man, right? Or, even Zach Charbonnet at UCLA, where it's like, dude, did he just stiff arm 7 people? Trayvon Henderson doesn't really do that, right? You go, man, he almost had it. That was almost an 80-yard run. That's a lot of his runs, and that's great. That's okay, but that's all potential. Mayan Williams is there. He's, he's a lead back, dude. It's just, so I'm right there with you. I don't want to talk trash about Trayvon Henderson, but Mayan Williams is a finished product. You know what he is. He's healthy. He's going to get his, and he's going to get some extra. So I'm with you. I'm Team Mayan.
Yeah, I think his just power running this year has been unreal.
But he's got the quick hips too, man.
Yeah.
He's got some wiggle too, bro.
Yeah, they were. I think there was another stat drop where they were just it wasn't this week. It was last week against Wisconsin, where they're he's only had 1 rush in his career over 30 yards, and then he breaks that huge run against Rutgers. I was like, oh, there's the speed.
But that I don't know if that's that was always a stat everybody talks about. Is like breakaway plays. It's a very analytical stat, like breakthrough plays, big plays, stuff like that. And maybe that's my problem evaluating running backs. I was a big Master T guy too. Is that I don't value that. I would rather have, and I was more of a J.K. Dobbins guy than Trey Sermon when Trey Sermon was around, he was splitting carries. I was always for the other guy, right? I was Trey. I'm more of a guy like I want my 4 yards. Give me the guy. Give me the dog that's going to get 4 yards in a loaded box. That's my guy. So maybe that's my flaw because of like you said, I wrote for Browns where I would do the NFL draft pieces, and the guys that I would like a running back would never get taken in the first round. They just didn't because they weren't the full package. They didn't, they got their 4 yards, and that's what it was.
Do you see right now with Mayan Williams' performance, do you see the tide? I mean, obviously, it's probably still going to be about a 50-50 shift, but would you almost say that Mayan Williams is the running back one on this team right now?
He has to be, right? I mean, both statistically and per snap. I don't even think that's me being biased. I think that's more of a statistical what it is. I think that you might see – I think that when the Buckeyes play Michigan, that might be a big breakout game for Trayvon because he, like I said, he does have that extra gear where if you can get him in space, boom, 80 yards, right? That's a dagger. That's a very momentum shifting game. Mayan doesn't really give you that. He's like a plussed up version of Hassan Haskins. So I could see a game like that where Trayvon, we talk about how good Trayvon is and maybe he should have got more snaps. But I mean, if you're trying to just pound people into the dirt like Michigan State, I mean, that's what they should do with Mayan is let Trayvon rest some more, just pound it with Mayan until Michigan State cries and then just go home because that's what you can do, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, Mayan Williams has been fantastic this year. What also has just been amazing to see, and not that I guess it's really a surprise, but what have been your thoughts on this Ohio State offense? You lose Jackson Smith and Jigba, basically hasn't played this year. And it's like the offense at wide receiver just doesn't skip a beat. I mean, the job Brian Hartline has done has been incredible.
Yeah. Oh, he's great at recruiting dudes. I mean, and it's easy to see why, right? He's tall, he's rich, he's good looking. He drives a Lamborghini. So it's why would you not want to play for him? That's who I want to play for, right? But it's funny because everything that if it's underrated, I think Ohio State's positional stuff. I think that they've done better in guys that were underrated, and the guys that were expected to be great kind of haven't lived up to the hype a little bit. Now that seems pretty rash, but I'm just trying to. They haven't really played much, so I'm trying to just grasp at straws of what could potentially happen. But yeah, guys like Julian Fleming. I mean, Julian Fleming is a force, dude. I think that if he can stay healthy, he continue to be healthy. I think he could be an early round. I'm talking first rounder. I think he could be a first round draft pick, dude. Emeka Egbuka, I wanted them to play him last year. I think I wrote an article for Buckeyes Wire last preseason where I predicted Emeka Egbuka was going to play over Jackson Smith and Jigba. No joke. That was a big egg on my face, but that's how much I liked Egbuka coming out. He's just smooth. Coming out of high school, he was just very smooth, very got separation with ease. And I was like, dude, that's pretty intense, right? But Marvin Harrison Jr., what can you say about that guy? I mean, that guy's just phenomenal. So I kind of knew that going in. I was on a podcast a couple months ago preseason. We talked about the wide receiver core, and I said this wide receiver core is going to be better than last year. We had a lot of the same kind of, it's like it was the same style. They were all great, but it was the same style. This wide receiver group feels more like a complete difference. It's like, I don't know. It's like when you go to the grocery store, you can load up on Fruity Pebbles. I won't judge you. Fruity Pebbles are great, but maybe you want to mix in some Captain Crunch. That's all I'm saying. That's how this receiver core kind of, what I mean? Like you got the tall guy, you got the fast guy, you got the athletic guy, you got some freshmen that don't quite know what they're doing that when I've seen them on the field have played really well. And the freshmen too, man, some of those guys that have that tape coming out of high school, I think the future's bright for this wide receiver room for sure.
Not to mention next year. Even more. It's crazy. It's not. I don't think it's going to end anytime soon. And Jackson Smith and Jigba, that's a dude that I really truly believe that he is phenomenal. I think he's one of the best wide receivers in Ohio State history. I think once he's 100%, and I'm glad they're taking the time with him. He was running around, looked great pre-game. But I was 100% comfortable with him sitting out. I'm 100% comfortable with him sitting out against Michigan State too. Wait till he's fully healthy. I mean, that's a guy that, he's a stud. He is an absolute stud. So I can only
imagine what they're going to do once they bring him back in the room.
Yeah, and their quarterback, C.J. Stroud, has – I mean, on Saturday, it was probably one of his – and it's funny we say this – one of his more poor performances that he's had so far this year, but really in his Buckeye career. What have been your thoughts on C.J. Stroud so far this year? And given where we are, again, it's still early. Would you say he's the front runner for the Heisman Trophy?
You kind of nailed it, dude. I mean, even when he has a bad game, we sit here and talk. He's still the top 3 best college quarterback. You know what I mean? His bad days are what Sean Clifford dreams about, man. That's what I mean. Like you can't even fathom it. But I thought his worst game was against Toledo. He threw those 2 bad passes to Cade Stover, and I was like, oh, that's cool. Cade Stover's dead for no reason. I don't know why you threw it there. But he every now and again he'll have a play where he stared at a guy or he thinks that the guy's going to get open, and you'll see a guy like – I'm trying to think of what happened the last game. I think he was just waiting for Emeka Egbuka to get open, and I was like, dude, Cade Stover's open, or whoever it was. He does that about once or twice a game. But I think that's going to happen when you're so good. You know what I mean? It's kind of like the guy's going to get open eventually, so you're just trying to wait it out. A lot of people always say he does really well in chaos, which I agree with. I'm really nitpicking. I'm trying to be objective and nitpick on CJ Stroud. But you always see people say, oh, he does so well in chaos. Well, sometimes he creates that chaos. You know what I mean? It's almost like he gets bored back there. I mean, he had enough time. It was against Arkansas State. No, it had to be against Toledo too. But he had enough time to make a sandwich back there. And he started rolling out, and I'm like, what is he doing? Why is he doing that? And I think it was because he was wanting the wide receivers to break towards him, but it just felt like it was unnecessary, you know what I mean? And then he made a sweet pass, and everybody, all Twitter lit up, and I'm thinking he didn't have to do that though. He could have sat back there for 20 more minutes before, you know what I mean? So sometimes I feel like he brings out himself, but I mean, he's great. Like same with Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think C.J. Stroud is one of the best quarterbacks in Ohio State history. You know what I mean? If you're asking me to choose between him and Justin Fields, I gotta take Stroud as a pure quarterback. I mean, he lights it up, dude. I mean, his ball placement when he needs to, that ball placement. You know what I mean? The patience. He's a badass. Is he my number 1 Heisman guy? Man, it's really hard to watch. It's really hard to watch Kansas and not think that quarterback with what they're doing.
He's fantastic. He has been fantastic.
I mean, he's not C.J. Stroud who's going to be a first-round draft pick. But you're talking about a dude who puts the team on his back. You know what I mean? He's that guy when you grab the NCAA football game. You're like, I'm gonna grab this guy. 90 speed, 90 acceleration, the big old arm. You know what I mean? Like that was So I mean, yes, I don't know. I don't know if C.J. Stroud is a lock to. I don't think he's a lock to get the Heisman, but he's definitely up there. I think he's the favorite now on most betting sites, I believe.
Yeah, I think Bet Online had him as the favorite. I know Daniels is up there, Caleb Williams. Yeah. Bryce Young slipped a little bit because it looks like he might miss time with a shoulder.
Yeah, well, it helps too that Georgia, who's the best team in the country, doesn't have a Heisman guy. They don't have a guy that's, Stetson Bennett. I mean, we're kind of seeing Georgia's big flaws the last couple of weeks. Stetson Bennett is not very good, right? They don't. He doesn't move the needle. Bryce Young. Alabama's got their flaws too. I don't think Alabama's very. I think this is a very average Alabama team by Alabama standards, but Bryce Young. I mean, when the game is on the line, he kind of makes it happen. So, but I like C.J. Stroud more. I would say C.J. Stroud's probably out of those 3 the best one.
Yeah,
I still think it's early.
What'd you say?
I just think it's early in the season.
It's very early.
This is fun conversation, though, man.
It is fun.
It's great conversation.
I can't say like definitive. Like right now, he might be.
Well, it's tough. It's tough to talk about. It's tough to be like, Ohio State's. If I had the playoffs today, Ohio State's in it. But you got that thing in the back of your mind that's like, dude, they haven't played anybody away, and Notre Dame sucks. You know what I mean? You kind of question yourself. But the beautiful thing about college football this year, I don't know if it's because of the transfer portal or what it is, or the extra year of eligibility, but the parity is pretty. It's out there. You know what I mean? Georgia's the best team in the country, and we saw them struggle with Missouri, who sucks. And then Kent State, I mean, they were only beat Kent State by a touchdown, for like the first half. You know what I mean? Alabama was losing to Texas, who's not very good. Texas is, they're average. who are some of the other USC. We saw them struggle with Oregon State. Oregon State's very good, but USC is supposed to be 70 points a game, right? So everybody's got their issues. The only team that hasn't shown any issues is because Michigan played. They finally played their first team that was okay at football, that could breathe.
Was that the Maryland?
Yeah, in Maryland, and they struggled. Maryland almost beat them. So everybody's got their flaws, I think.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Josh, before we let you go, we love to ask every guest this. What is your prediction for Ohio State season, their record? Do you think they win the Big Ten title, make the college football playoff? And if they make the college football playoff, how does it end for them?
Oh, man, my prediction? Okay, so I thought at the beginning of the year, if you would ask me 6 months ago, I would have said Notre Dame was going to beat Ohio State. I just thought Ohio State always starts out slow. The new head coach, the X factor. I thought Tyler Buchner was going to be good, and he wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Tyler Buchner's not good, so that was wrong on me. But I thought that was really tough. They should fly through. The only other test is Michigan, and that's because Michigan has a very, very strong offensive line. But I'm going to be honest with you. The defense, that's one of the things that's really, really surprised me. I'm not worried about Michigan. I think we float through the Big Ten. I don't know who's going to come out of the West.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, if it's a team like Purdue that's got kind of this, they got a tight end that's going to be an early round draft pick and a quarterback who's been there for 32 years. That could be a team, that could be a team where it's like, darn it, are they going to win? But other than that, I don't, if they go up against a team like Minnesota, they should pound Minnesota. That's a team that's just going to run the ball 80 times like Wisconsin. Who are the, Wisconsin's out of it. They suck. Illinois, it's Illinois is going to be, who. So and they're just as good if they do win the Big Ten and they go to the playoffs, they're just as good as anybody else. They're just as good as Georgia. That's the big worry is Georgia's defense is so good, so fast, and so big. Can they stop us cold? That's the only team I'd be scared of. But who Alabama will beat out. I'm not threatened by Alabama. USC, after seeing what they did against Oregon State, I'm not worried about that. That's it. That's really my big fears. Georgia and I guess Purdue.
So
I don't know.
Do you have us going undefeated then and win the national title?
I don't think it's a bad bet. I think I'm cool with that. I'll say it. Yeah, I think that there's I'm larger than 50% shot that Ohio State goes undefeated and wins the national title.
Okay, I love it. Well, Josh, we really appreciate you joining us. Be sure to give Josh a follow. You can follow him at Josh Keatley 16 and get all his work at Buckeyes Wire. Josh, thank you so much for joining us. Can't wait to have you on again.
Yeah, man, it was a blast. Thanks for having me.
Yep, thanks, Josh. Have a good evening. Well, man, JD, that was a lot of fun for sure. Before we get to our next guest, we got to take a minute, though, and we just have to shout out our good partners at Homage. And, guys, I wear it every week, and this is mainly because this is my favorite Ohio State Homage shirt, and I wash it every week. Don't worry. CJ Stroud is going to win the Heisman Trophy. But you guys have to go get your tees right now, and you can go get them at homage.com. Homage has officially licensed gear, NFL, college football, all other teams as well. So they're getting all kinds of gear together for you guys. And the Scarlet and Gray Podcast and Network 216 is proud to be a proud partner of Homage. Hopefully in the future we'll have some giveaways for you guys that we're able to do. But again, we really appreciate all you guys that show support to Homage and to Scarlet and Gray Podcast and Network 216. So, but JD, before we get to our next guest, do you think Ohio State wins the title? Is that where we're at right now? Is it still too early to where you just won't say it?
I don't like predicting stuff. I don't like being
Dude, that's fair. But you have to understand, though.
From what I've seen, I don't think anybody can stop their offense. I don't think any team can stop their offense this year. So,
yeah.
And the defense has made enough of an improvement from last year that it's not out of the realm of possibility that we're the top team in the country right now.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with how Georgia and Alabama have been struggling against teams. So we'll see.
Yeah, man. It's It's going to be interesting for sure. Obviously, a fantastic guest. Josh does great work for Buckeyes Wire. But here, pretty soon, we're going to bring in our special guest to preview Michigan State and Ohio State. It is the first time this year that the Buckeyes are going on the road to East Lansing. So it's going to be interesting. Michigan State's under a lot of turmoil there right now internally. I mean, there's no doubt about it. They are 2-3.
Yeah, and they started the season ranked 21st, I believe.
Mm-hmm. They were in the top 25 to start the year.
Yeah, and so not a lot of good. They've lost 3 straight.
Yeah,
So.
I mean it's quite a tough time right now for Michigan State fans, but that's why we're gonna have Connor in to break it down with us. But I mean, with Michigan State, I wonder. I can't wait to get his thoughts. I wonder if it's a team that we just completely overhyped going in. I mean, it seems like every year we have those teams in the AP top 25 that we have them in the top 25 and end up bottoming out because we completely just misjudged how good of a team it really was. Michigan State might be one of those. I know it's rough for them too because their quarterback situation is always tough every year. But ladies and gentlemen, we are now joined by Connor Muldowney. He covers the Spartans for Spartans Avenue. Connor, how are you doing this evening?
After the weekend, I'm hanging in there.
Oh, man.
How are you guys doing?
Hey, we're doing good. We really appreciate you joining us tonight. We want to get right down into it. Michigan State this year was in the top 25 to begin the year, AP top 25. And right before you got on, we even kind of briefly talked about it. They've now lost 3 straight. What's going on with Michigan State right now?
I wish it was like one easy thing I could tell you. So, in my opinion, it just seems like there's a lot of coaching issues going on, and I'm not talking about Mel Tucker. I think the future under Tucker is still bright, and I think everybody should be bought in still, and the people who aren't are just. I mean, it's really his second real year as a head coach. He had the COVID year, then he had last year, which was, I mean, he exceeded everybody's expectations, and that kind of, he kind of screwed himself over there by going 11-2 in year 2, and then everybody expects the world from you in year 3. You lose Kenneth Walker, which was a huge part of the offense, and the run game just hasn't really been there. Thorne, I've heard that he's kind of had an off-season thing, maybe possibly a little injury that he was working through in the off-season. But I mean, it doesn't make sense to why he regressed so much from last year. And then the defense is just I've been very openly critical of the defensive coordinator, and I want changes made, but the defense has gotten worse somehow, and it was already bad last year. So that's what's going on now.
Hey, it's kind of funny you mentioned the defensive coordinator because we're Cleveland Browns fans here. And so we've been openly criticizing our defensive coordinator and wanted him fired for the last couple weeks. So completely can relate to that.
I feel that. I watch Michigan State on Saturdays, and then I watch the Lions on Sundays giving up 48 points. So it's like I haven't seen good defensive play from my teams in years.
It's the good open door defense.
Yeah, exactly.
And Connor, you brought up Peyton Thorne. What do you think has really occurred? I mean, he was solid for Michigan State, and this year, I mean, he has 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns, 6 picks. What's happened to him as a quarterback? Is it because in the past, Michigan State, one of the things they've had in the past is they've had issues at quarterback. It's hard to find that guy that's like the next Connor Cook for them, for you guys, next Kirk Cousins. What's happened to Peyton Thorne and why? Like, what's going on with him? Is Kenneth Walker that big of a loss that it really took? Defenses had to key on Kenneth Walker that much that they didn't necessarily have to worry about Peyton Thorne as much? Or what do you think's going on there?
See, I think that is like part of why he's probably struggled a little bit this year, getting adjusted. He's had two new running backs that have kind of carried the workload in the backfield, and neither has really stepped up and looked like the guy. But I don't think that's the number one thing. I think that the first two games, you could kind of tell he was pressing a little too much. He was trying to, make plays that weren't there. And when he extended plays with his legs, which he should do since he's athletic enough to run, he just never does, which makes me think that he's afraid of getting injured. He has something nagging that may possibly get re-injured. I'm not sure. But when he's tried to make plays with his legs, he'll force a throw or do something ridiculous that isn't necessary. He did that the first couple games. Did that against Washington. I think that he's just the last two games. I don't know if you've watched the Minnesota or Maryland game, but I mean he's been playing from behind for like 3 straight games. Like he's been playing with a deficit for 3 straight games, and anytime a quarterback has to do that, and every time they go on the field, there's another touchdown on the board for the other team. You try to do too much, and he's gotten his accuracy a little bit fixed since the first couple games, which is nice to see. But then it's the decision making. He's just making poor decisions, which is, I mean, as a junior, 4th year guy, you gotta, you can't be making freshman mistakes, and he's been doing way too much of that.
Is there a issue with the offensive line in terms of like keeping him up?
Well, see, you'll get mixed reviews from people. Like the offensive line has been awful in the run game, but they've done a decent job of letting him get like at least a couple of seconds to kind of go through his reads. But I still think he's running for his life more often than he should be. So if any type of blitz, any type of like misdirection on the line, anything like that happens, the line, like their brains just stop working. And there's always like a free pass to the quarterback. So I'm sure Ohio State has seen that on film, and they're going to try to do some type of blitz package and kind of get after him, because he gets pretty rattled when he's hit a ton.
Okay, yeah. And on Michigan State's side on the offensive side of the ball, who are some players? I mean, again, Kenneth Walker being gone from Michigan State is absolutely huge. Who are some players that Buckeye fans that aren't familiar with Michigan State are guys that we need to watch out for on Saturday?
The number one guy I would say is probably Keon Coleman, who's a sophomore receiver. He's kind of built like a truck for a receiver, which is weird. He's just like an athletic freak. So he's been our best, most reliable target this year, and that's because Jaden Reed has been kind of hampered with an injury. He missed the Washington game. He hasn't looked like himself this year. But if he gets back to close to 100% by Saturday, that's a guy you need to watch for, Jaden Reed. And then there's Daniel Barker, the tight end, who's been like a nice safety valve for Thorne. He transferred over from Illinois, and he's actually been really solid for us this year. And the last guy I would say out of the backfield, I like Jalen Berger for the first 2 games. And Jarek Broussard. I was big on Jarek Broussard heading into this year, and he's just, I don't know if it's the line not opening holes or what, but he's looked rattled and not ready for the Big Ten. But Elijah Collins, the guy who broke out a couple of years ago in D'Antonio's last year, he's been really solid, and he hasn't been getting enough carries. I think he got 5 carries last game, and he was averaging 7 point something yards per carry, and then they just stopped running the ball. So he's a guy I think that should get more carries, more touches, because he's been the most productive in the backfield.
Okay. And as far as like for this game for Michigan State, we talked about earlier with our guest, it's Ohio State's first game. They're going on the road. I have had the opportunity to go to East Lansing. I've been in that stadium, and when I went there, the Buckeyes were ranked number 2 with JT Barrett, nearly lost the game to an unranked Michigan State team. What are the keys to the game for Michigan State on Saturday if, one, they want to keep this close, or for them to pull off the upset? Because one of the biggest things so far, Ohio State has the largest margin of victory in the country so far this year.
That's not what I want to hear. My confidence level, first of all, going into this game is like ungodly low. If it could be like on a scale of 1 to 10, it would be the negatives. But if Michigan State wants to have any shot at this game, they have to figure something out defensively to get after CJ Stroud, because they've gotten 0 pressure in the past few games. They led the nation in sacks through 2 games. And then after, I think they may have 1 sack in the last 3 games, maybe. It's been awful. And then when you give a quarterback time like that, like Michael Penix just torched our side. Like he did whatever he wanted all game long. And then Tanner Morgan, who's like 45 years old, threw for like 300 yards. And then we just made Tua's brother look like Tua. Like it was crazy. We've actually, our defensive backfield, there was a play last week where somebody caught the ball and there was no one within 12 yards in front of him, 12 yards behind him, 12 yards beside him. He was just wide open, just no one in the area. That can't happen against Ohio State. Like if a little bit of pressure, maybe a little bit of pressure. Don't forget that there's, tight ends leaking out, running backs leaking out, wide open in the flat. The pressure is the number one thing. And if Peyton Thorne is the starter, which I'm assuming he is, I don't think that they'll make a quarterback change, but he needs to have like the best game of his career. He needs to be basically perfect on Saturday if State's going to have a chance.
What would you say? Sorry, TJ.
No,
what would you
fine,
say the team is?
What would I say about what?
What would you say the strength of Michigan State is?
Well, up until last week, I would have said receivers. The receiving core has been really good this year. They've kind of been making up for the rest of the offense looking pretty average, and the play calling has looked not great. But there were probably 5 to 10 drops last week where I was just like, I don't know if they're not seeing the ball. I don't know. Is the hurricane hitting Maryland? Like, I honestly did not know if the weather. I knew the weather was supposed to be bad last week, but I don't like watching it on TV. It didn't seem like it was, downpour or anything. But they were dropping it. They were taking their eye off the ball. They were trying to look upfield too soon. I would still say receivers. Definitely wouldn't say offensive line. Definitely wouldn't say defensive line. Coming to the year, I would have said probably linebackers as well. But there's been so many injuries to the defensive side of the ball. I couldn't even tell you who's going to be healthy enough to play like on the line or at linebacker. So receivers definitely probably going to lead the way for the team.
That's definitely rough. Like 5 games into the season, you're already.
It's been tough. Like you can kind of tell against Akron. I think it was Akron, or maybe it was in the opener that we had Darius Snow, who's our starting linebacker. He was in that rotation to start at linebacker. He went down with a season-ending injury, and then Xavier Henderson, who's our starting safety, went down with a injury. And they haven't really said when he might come back. He might not come back. I don't know. And then the Akron game, I think it was, or maybe it was the Akron game. Minnesota game. They lost three defensive linemen, starting defensive linemen in that same game. So it's just been it's been a year. It's been a fun year.
One of the things we were talking about before you joined us, a lot of years in the AP Top 25, some of the teams that make it at the bottom, so to speak, are they end up kind of having a year like this. They end up not performing up to expectations. As a Michigan State fan and covering the team, I mean, obviously you guys weren't expecting to be 2-3 right now, but going into this year, did you guys believe that this was a top 25 team, or was there were you guys kind of questioning that a little bit, that Michigan State was really this talented to compete for a Big Ten title?
I think that everybody kind of thought that they were top 25. I think most people around college football would have said that, but I don't think we would have expected the regression. Not necessarily regression, but I think we set our expectations way too high, and there were some people who were a little down on the team. They were saying, "Oh, well, we lost this, this, and this. We'll probably be like the reasonable fans predicted a couple steps back, like 8-4, 9-3 type of season." But I don't think anybody expected us to be fighting for bowl eligibility, possibly, playing at the Motor City Bowl or whatever it's called now. I don't think anybody expected that, but the reasonable fans did expect to take steps back, and top 15 was a little bit like maybe not top 15, but we definitely thought we were top 25 worthy.
And before we let you go, Connor, this weekend's game, obviously a lot needs to go right for Michigan State to win this game or keep it close, I would say, for that matter, kind of like you talked about. You have to make a prediction for this weekend. What would you say the final score ends up being?
Oh man.
Our same guest that we had on for Rutgers last week, it was a similar response, so I understand.
Yeah. Rutgers. You guys kind of was it 49-10 with Rutgers?
Yeah, and that was probably one of our worst performances of the year. It really was. We just sleptwalked right through. We just slept. We seriously really looked kind of lackadaisical against Rutgers. This is kind of boring. And
TJ Stroud, 30, 40 points, you kind of lose interest. And
it seems like Ohio State's biggest issue this year is they don't get up for games against lesser teams, and so
I'll take that.
It's like Rutgers started off. They were leading the game 7-0. They scored a touchdown, just muff punt, and then they don't look like they show up to play against these smaller teams or lesser opponents, as you would say. So
I will say that Ohio State seems to always play their best against Michigan State, whatever it is. There have been games over the years, like you mentioned, when they almost lost at Michigan State with JT Barrett. They've had back in the prime D'Antonio years, these were some of the best battles in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
And I think that even up until D'Antonio left, even when they were terrible, they were playing Ohio State tough for some ungodly reason. I don't know why they were in those games, but I think that Ohio State takes this game more seriously. Obviously, they take it more seriously than a Rutgers, in my opinion. I just can't see them taking or losing interest in a Michigan State road game, even judging by how bad we are. I think Ohio State's gonna kind of plow right through and go about their way on Saturday night, and I think it'll be God. So I think we scored 2 touchdowns. I don't know. We scored 2 touchdowns on Maryland. I hope it's not as bad as last year, where the game was just over 5 minutes into it.
Oh, last year was insane. I still can't believe that.
I was so mentally checked out after the first 2 touchdowns. I was like, wow, this is going to be fun. I'll give it a modest 48-17. No, 48-13.
Okay. All right.
We'll keep it close for 5 minutes this time, and then it'll just be a bloodbath.
Hey, well, Connor, we really appreciate you taking time out of your evening to join us. Guys, be sure to give Connor a follow. You can follow him at Connor Muldowney on Twitter, and you can follow all his work that is at SpartanAvenue.com. Connor, thanks for joining us. We look forward to having you on again when Ohio State plays Michigan State.
I appreciate you guys. Good luck this weekend. Go easy on us.
Thanks, you too.
See you guys.
So, JD, Michigan State, man, it sounds like they're really struggling.
I didn't really
bad in Michigan State.
Yeah, I had no idea. You could look at their record and be like, well, they're not having a good season, but it sounds like they have a lot of issues, everywhere. It's
exactly
every position group is struggling. Like we talk about, Ohio State has maybe our secondary is kind of our weak point right now with the team, but we have these backups that are coming in and playing well enough to win us games 49-10 and
nuts, dude.
And so it's kind of different, and we talk about it a lot, being fans of Ohio State. There's tiers to college football, and Ohio State is in that tier with those elite programs, Georgia, Alabama, Clemson, and the way that we reload and gather talent and then execute it on the field it's special in college football. It doesn't happen. We're just one of those teams that we're lucky to be fans of because we grew up in the state of Ohio. So
I would say that's fair. It's kind of crazy to me because Michigan State normally is a team that is contending, I would say, for a Big Ten title. And this year,
they finished the season ranked in the top 10 last year.
I know. That's what's crazy to me. It's just the drop off. And I mean, we didn't talk about it enough. Well, you could really talk about it, I feel like, for an entire show if you wanted to. The loss of Kenneth Walker from Michigan State has seemed to be like that's the end all be all. Well, it really seems to be.
He was their offensive identity last year. Everything ran through Kenneth Walker
and Jalen Naylor.
Yeah, I wanted to ask him. I did ask him about, like, you know, is Thorpe getting sacked a lot, or Thorne getting sacked a lot, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to ask, like, are they missing a lot of offensive linemen from last season?
That would have been a great follow-up.
Yeah, because I mean, I would have to look into it, but you think offensive linemen are usually pretty consistent. So, like, if you have a really good running season and you don't, like, Ohio State's only has one offensive lineman that wasn't a starter last year, and so the cohesion's still there. They, you know, that's only one piece of that 5-man line that you're replacing. So I wonder if there's been, like, shuffling of players playing different positions, like a center moving to guard, or if they graduated a lot of people, or if they're playing a lot of freshmen. So I wish I would have gotten a chance to ask him that, because that could be the root of the problem. Is Thorne doesn't trust offensive line. They're not running the ball quite as effectively as they were last year. And
it's a huge problem. I mean, because when it comes down to it, I mean, with Michigan State, I'm really glad we got to talk about Mel Tucker, because that's a hot topic right now, is his future. And again, they just gave him that huge extension, but it's still a big topic because he's not performed. You made him one of the highest paid college football coaches, and people are not patient. I mean, when you're in that state up north, regardless if you're Michigan or Michigan State.
Yeah, and then you look at the season he had last year, and they hired him, and Michigan State was in the dumpster. Like, they hadn't had a good season, and, like, so D'Antoni left, and I think they were pretty bad. They only won like 4 games.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was coming into a situation where they were, like, thinking rebuild, and then they finished top 10 in his second season. So, like, you can imagine, as a Spartan fan, you're thinking, man, like, this could be the year where we take another step, and then we're contending for, you know, Big Ten title, college football playoff. And so, you know they're hurting right now, because a lot of them probably had those expectations kind of blown out of proportion, and now they're staring down the barrel of not even playing in a bowl game right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dude. And we have to give our predictions for this game. Ohio State, as of right now, the spread is 25.5. So they're 25.5 point favorites right now. Again, it's our first road game at East Lansing, 4:00 kickoff. How do you think the Buckeyes do on Saturday? What do you have as a score?
So I kind of have, it's a little bit of a bold prediction, but I think Rutgers actually finishes higher in the Big Ten than Michigan State. So when I say the score, don't, like, look at me like I'm crazy, but I think we win this game like 52-0.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So, like,
okay.
I think Rutgers is a better team than people are giving them credit for.
I would agree with that. I don't think we talked about it last week with Brian. Yeah. I mean, I think that Rutgers is an up and coming team in the Big Ten. I really do. So
52-0 is my prediction.
I have to admit, I'm a little surprised just that you have them scoring like nothing, but at the same time, we beat them 56-7 last year. So it's not that ridiculous of a prediction. This one's tough for me. I do think they're going to cover, because I think 25.5, that's an easy cover for Ohio State, given what we've seen this year. East Lansing, man, we've struggled when we've gone up to Michigan State in the past, but I do think, given everything that Michigan State's dealing with right now, Connor kind of hit on it. They have a lot of injuries, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Peyton Thorne's been very inconsistent. They don't really have a running back that's stepped up. The offensive line, they can't run the ball. Outside, I will say the thing that worries me a little bit is when he says he thinks the strength of their team is at wide receiver, given that our weaknesses are secondary.
Yeah.
That worries me a little bit. But that said, I do think Ohio State's going to win this game. I think they're going to end up scoring about 48 points. So I think it's going to be 48-14.
Cool.
I think Michigan State. I think Michigan State's going to score. I do.
When we do our end of season recap, we need to get all of our predictions and like line them up.
We do. Yeah, kind of like we do on the Faithful Dogs podcast. Yeah, we absolutely need to do that.
See where we're sitting overall. Before we get off, I want to just briefly go over Rutgers because we didn't quite get to do it with the two guests. So
yeah, no, that's fair.
So I'm just gonna run through like my notes that I took, just quick notes. And then feel free. We'll get into your notes and then we will turn it over to Down with the Browns. Heck yeah. So Rutgers trickery to start the game. You know, they didn't really have a chance. And they knew that, and which is why they ran like 6 trick plays in the first 2 drives. And then just try to keep our team off guard. But I think the Buckeyes did a good job staying sound and really other than the muffed punt, I don't think if we don't muff that punt on the first punt of the game, there's a pretty good chance that Rutgers doesn't score the entire game. So, yeah, you never know, butterfly effect, hindsight 2020 kind of thing, but there's a pretty good chance. Yeah, Mayan Williams, we talked about him earlier. He's outstanding, 5 touchdowns.
Yeah,
he just looks like he's the guy right now. He's definitely the hot hand on offense.
Absolutely.
And Julian Fleming, he seems to be making a lot of big plays. He's not,
and they're making a habit of getting him the ball too.
Yeah, he's on the field a lot, and he's getting the ball. He's not getting like huge yardage or anything, but he's scoring touchdowns.
Yeah, which is what you want to see. You just want to see him healthy.
Yeah, he's healthy. He's playing well. Love to see it. I noticed that there was like a lot of small things that the wide receivers were making mistakes on, whether it's like the illegal touching, running out of bounds, coming back in, missed assignments, missed routes, just small things that, you know, they're not huge, but they definitely added up over the game. And it was enough for me to be like, man, these wide receivers are kind of off of their game today. Time to sound the alarm on Denzel Burke.
Yeah, we hit on that one pretty extensively. Makes sense.
But yeah, that's pretty much all my notes. I mean, the offense looked really good, even though CJ Stroud played terrible. Terrible. And then, Tommy Eichenberg, Steel Chambers, they're so good. They're such a good linebacker duo back there. And they're really standing out on the field. So those are kind of my notes from the game.
Hey, I mean, you hit it, though. I mean, Steel Chambers and Tommy Eichenberg, if Jim Knowles was here when those guys came to campus, I really wonder how good they really – I mean, because they're good. They're really good now, but they haven't even been playing linebacker that long. If they were playing linebacker when they got here with Jim Knowles, I think these are all Americans. I really do. They're balling out, and they're showing – Eichenberg especially is showing that he is a contender for the Buckeyes Award as of right now. He keeps playing this way. He will be a finalist for that award.
We said it last week, and then he went and played another great game. So, him and Steel Chambers are the two dudes I've been watching a lot when they're on the field, just to see how they're making their reads. They're great in coverage. They're making me proud as a former linebacker myself. So.
I love it. Well, anyways, guys, we appreciate you tuning in to this episode of the Scarlet and Gray Podcast, episode number 8. I want to give a special shout. I want to thank once again Josh Keatley from Buckeyes Wire from joining us. Appreciate his insight. Obviously want to take a minute to thank Connor Muldowney as well from Spartan Avenue for joining us. This has been the Scarlet and Gray Podcast. Give Jordan Dalton a follow at Jordan Lee Dalton on Twitter. You can follow me at T_Johnson_TJ, and the show itself, the Scarlet and Gray Podcast. We can't wait to talk to you guys all next week. Thank you for tuning in, and go Buckeyes.